In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Please be seated. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's wonderful to be back here with you at Church-Sheboygan, one of the more beautiful churches in, well, probably not just the diocese, maybe in the country. But not just beautiful building, beautiful worship, beautiful people, and some beautiful ministry. I know that you all don't just gather to worship, but there are lots of other things going on around here, reaching out to those who are poor, to those caught up in sex trafficking, to people stuck in addiction, some real gospel ministry. You have a wonderful leader in Father Carl, and you get to see Mother Michelle back. And let me just say, since this is my first time back since I took her away from you all, that I apologize. But we did need her services elsewhere. So it's good to have her back here, and it is good to be here. Leslie is in the choir, wonderful music ministry you have here as well. So lots of good things going on here. I had a great time hanging out with the Sunday school between the services, and we're going to have First Communion and confirmation and receiving some new members from other traditions. So this is a great day, and it's good to be here with you. I want to look a bit at the gospel and some of the other lessons. This is the Sunday that is usually set aside for to remember that Jesus is the Good Shepherd. And I want to get at that by telling a story about a man who went on a tour to Switzerland and went with a guide and a group hiking and climbing up into the Swiss Alps. And you can imagine, has anybody been in the Swiss Alps? Oh, some people know what it looks like. Well, I've not been, but I've seen pictures. This man was captivated by the beauty of it. There were mountain flowers, there were these great formations of rocks, the great peaks of the Alps, and it was spectacularly beautiful, magnificent vistas. And he was wandering around enjoying the view and got separated from the rest of the group and didn't realize it until night started to fall and a thick fog settled over the mountains. And nighttime and a thick fog can be a little bit disorienting in Sheboygan. But in the Swiss Alps, it can be a real problem if you don't know your way around. The man realized suddenly that he was separated from the rest of the group and from the guide and was lost and in a very dangerous situation. He couldn't just start wandering back, hoping to find where he wanted to go, because there were cliffs and crevices and all sorts of other hazards that might do him in. So in his fear, he began to cry out, hoping that his voice might carry through the fog and find somebody to help him in his distress. And he began to hear some voices calling out, offering him advice about what to do. But the first voices that he heard had accents that made him not sure he wanted to trust their advice. If you're lost in the thick fog at night in the Swiss Alps, you probably don't want to listen to the average Englishman tell you where to go. Or for that matter, somebody who's got a Hoosier accent like mine from Indiana. There are not a whole lot of mountains in Indiana. You don't want to listen even to somebody from Sweden who might know something about mountains, but may not know about these particular mountains. So the man heard various voices calling him and telling him to do this and to do that, but he didn't want to listen to those voices because he didn't know if they knew the territory. And then he heard the voice of the tour guide. And he recognized that voice, but even more importantly, he recognized it as a Swiss voice and as a voice of somebody who knew the mountain. And the tour guide called back to him and said, "I can't just immediately get to where you are, But if you listen carefully to my voice and to my directions, I will guide you to safety." And then the tour guide began to say, "Here's what you need to do. Step back a few paces and you'll be against the wall of the mountain. And then I want you to turn right and begin to walk. And walk this many steps. And then I want you to stop and I want you to turn left. And you're going to go down the mountain a little bit. And then when you get to a level spot, I want you to hang yourself over the ledge and hang by your hands. And once you're there, you're going to have to trust me and let go. I promise you it's only 3 feet and not 300 feet. So the man let go and landed on the firm ground. And then he said, "Now I want you to turn to the right and continue to walk. And now you're going to be going uphill a little bit, and you're going to come across some rocks, and you're going to have to climb up the rocks." Anyway, the man continued to give guidance for this lost tourist in the midst of in the darkness and in the fog, and managed to get him safely from where he was to the rest of the group, where he was embraced and received, and there was much rejoicing. I want to suggest that that's sort of what Jesus is saying in the gospel. When Jesus says he is the good shepherd, when Jesus says the sheep hear my voice and they hear, and when they enter through the gate, they will be safe in the sheepfold. Or as the psalm that we sang together says, "I will lead them into safe pasture by still water." Jesus is the good shepherd who guides us out of the thick darkness and fog of our own sinful brokenness, our own confusion about what's up and what's down, what's right and what's left, what's right and what's wrong. He calls us out of our own loneliness. He calls us out of a world that is full of enmity and envy, greed and violence, selfishness, stinginess of spirit. And he calls us to join him in the sheepfold, to become his sheep. There are lots of other voices telling us which way to go, telling us how to get out of the darkness and the fog, how to get from the danger to safety. But Jesus said his sheep will hear his voice and they will follow. We live in a world that in many ways can be described as thick with fog and darkness. A broken, sinful world. And we are caught up in it ourselves, and we need deliverance. And Jesus, the Good Shepherd, calls to each of us and says, "Come, follow me." As 1 Peter says, "Walk in my footsteps, and I will lead you as the Good Shepherd, the shepherd and guardian of your souls." It's not easy to follow Jesus, just as the man in the story about the Swiss Alps found that it wasn't easy necessarily to follow the guidance of the guide. Jesus calls us to do some pretty difficult things. In 1 Peter, we hear that Jesus, if we're going to follow him, Jesus did not retaliate when he was ill-used. Jesus said, "Love your neighbor," which sounds wonderful until you have real neighbors. But then Jesus didn't just stop there. He said, "Love your enemies." He said, "Turn the other cheek." He said to live a life of generosity, give and give and give. Forgive, forgive, and forgive. He said to take up our cross, deny ourselves, and follow him. And that's the hard part. That's hanging from the ledge and letting go, trusting that it's not a 300-foot drop, but a 3-foot drop. But Jesus also says, if you are willing to do that, if you're willing to listen to my voice and trust that I am indeed the good shepherd and I am also the gate. Jesus is a poet, and poets don't always follow strict logic. Shepherd and gate. He's also the lamb. But he's the shepherd who calls us, and he's the gate that keeps us safe and opens for us to come in and to come out. He says, if you're willing to do that, with all the difficulties and challenges that I'm going to call you to, there is abundant life in the sheepfold. At the end of the gospel, Jesus says, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. And he makes other promises, and I just want to remind you of some of the promises that Jesus, the Good Shepherd, offers us if we are willing to hear his voice and follow. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly of heart, and you will find rest for your souls. If you continue in my word, you will truly be my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them. That's a voice that I would like to hear and follow. I want to follow the voice of the Good Shepherd and enter through that gate into the rest of Jesus, a rest that anticipates the great eternal Sabbath, quieting all the anxieties and agitations that get stirred up in my own heart, and have real rest. I want to follow the voice of the Good Shepherd and enter through his gate into the sheepfold, where I can know the truth of Jesus, which is the truth about God, the truth about the world. And I want to listen to that voice speak the truth of humanity and the truth of my own self, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the beautiful about myself. I want to hear the voice of the Good Shepherd, and enter through the gate into the freedom of Jesus. Freedom from fear, anxiety, freedom from impatience and vexation, freedom from sin. And not just freedom from, but freedom for love, freedom for the other, to offer the generosity and hospitality of Jesus to those around me. I want to hear that voice and enter through that gate. I want to hear the voice of the Good Shepherd and enter through the gate so that I can experience the joy of Jesus and have that joy permeate my very being, so that then I can smuggle that joy into the world around me, a world that is all too often all too joyless. I want to hear the voice of the Good Shepherd and enter through that gate so that I can know Jesus' peace, deep inner peace and equilibrium, so that then I can follow Jesus, the Good Shepherd, and be a peacemaker and reconciler in the world around me. I want to hear the voice of the Good Shepherd and enter through that gate so that I might have life abundant, life to the full, life eternal. Not just life that goes on and on and on, because sometimes the life that I have, if I think about living forever, I'm not sure that's necessarily good news. But fullness of life that is joy beyond imagining, beauty beyond imagining, peace beyond imagining. That kind of life I would like to experience a little bit of now, even as I anticipate the kingdom. I want to hear the voice of the Good Shepherd and enter through that gate so that I can know that kind of life and be about the life of those around me. I want to hear the voice of the Good Shepherd and enter through the gate where I can experience even now a foretaste of Jesus' resurrection. It's Eastertide, and let us remember that as Christians we are always Easter people. And we can dare to believe, as Ephraim of Edessa, an early church leader, said, our death is already behind us and our resurrection is before us. And if our death is already behind us, then we have nothing to fear. And all we need to do is look forward with anticipation of the resurrection and the restoration of all things. I want to hear the voice of the Good Shepherd and enter through that gate. Jesus said, do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. I want to hear that voice. I want to do whatever it is that I need to do. Prayer, fasting, regular worship, setting aside time for Sabbath, whatever practices might help me hear more clearly that voice so I can enter into that life. Because I am convinced and I have experienced a foretaste of each of those things, the love, the joy, the peace, the life that Jesus promises, and I want more. And I suspect that each of you, whatever foretaste you've experienced, would like more of those things in your life. So let us commit ourselves to listening carefully to the voice of Jesus, the Good Shepherd and guardian of our souls, and continue to enter through that gate, that we might more and more enter into his life and love and share that life and love in the fog and darkness of the world around us.